So I want to welcome all of you to our first program for April. Wonderful program with Dr. Fox, who will talk to us about sleep. And as a 75-year-old man who gets up at least twice during the night, tips on how to get back to sleep quickly will be greatly welcome. 2 weeks from today, on the 21st, Rabbi Knight will honor us and talk about the wisdom of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory, who is the chief rabbi of the Orthodox Jewish community in the United Kingdom and an exceptionally well-known and respected pundit on Jewish affairs. So we're looking forward to that. I want to thank Nadine Fox and her team for a very successful second food drive. Our spring Passover food drive collected 98 bundles of food and about $700 in cash. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much, especially because it was a rainy, nasty day the first day, and sitting out there was appreciated. Also, thanks to Ted Hesberg and his crew on our Sterling subcommittee. We've been able to refurbish and donate 18 plus laptops this year to needy students and the best students. And we thank him and his crew for staying on top of that. It was a great contribution, especially during this difficult year. I want to ask all of you also, as we go into the summer and begin to look towards the fall, to begin thinking about some of our subcommittees, and we'll send around a listing of them again. We'd love to have you join. Anyone who is part of SPICE can join a subcommittee and participate. And that's things like program, helping to decide and find great speakers for our programs, Sterling, senior to senior, and a host of other functionalities that we work on a regular basis. Just a reminder that you or anyone can view all of our SPICE programs from the past year online. All you have to do is go up to the SPICE page on the Temple website, and it's there for you. And some of them are certainly well worth looking at, or having friends of yours who haven't seen it look at. So now, with great pleasure, I turn this over to Nadine Fox, who will introduce her daughter, Nadine.
Today, I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Nicole Fox. She was born in Charlotte, raised in Gastonia, and her grandparents were members of Temple Bethel from 1959 until their deaths. Today, she's going to keep us awake while teaching us the science and the romance of sleep and how to lull ourselves to a good sleep. After her presentation, she'll do a brief Q&A with us, and you can put your questions in the chat if you'd like to. Dr. Fox is a double board certified physician in psychiatry and lifestyle medicine, whose practice focuses on the intersection of general and psychiatric medicine. She's the lead psychiatrist for St. Luke's Hospital System based in Boise, Idaho, and is the incoming president-elect of the Idaho Psychiatric Association. She holds an appointment as the clinical chairperson for the Idaho Governor's Behavioral Health Council Advisory Board. She attended medical school and residency at University of Washington School of Medicine, where she is now a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry. While in residency, Dr. Fox received the Outstanding Teacher Scholar Award for work related to the neurology of stress, trauma, and connectivity. While not seeing patients, she trains students, residents, physicians, and administrators at local and national conferences on a variety of subjects. Dr. Fox also does corporate consulting on resiliency, engagement, and well-being. Prior to pursuing medicine, Dr. Fox obtained her Master's of Public Administration and worked in executive synagogue leadership in Seattle. Her career focused on management, strategic planning, and organizational behavior, creating strong, engaged teams. Her background in leadership and strategy gives her a unique perspective on resilience, providing a backdrop for creating change to improve individual health. She is the mother of my two of my gorgeous grandchildren, and proud to say my daughter. Dr. Fox, it's all yours.
All right, well, thank you. And if everyone would mute, that would be great. hopefully you can all hear me reasonably well. From time to time, my sound isn't great. And so if someone could just, if that happens, chime in and let me know, and I'll make a couple of adjustments. I also have a headset that I can put on if that helps. So I'm going to share my screen, and I am getting the notifications about the waiting room, but I can tell that the administrators here are quite competent and will handle that. So I won't have to worry about that at all. And here we go. I'm hoping you can see my screen now. How is that?
That looks
Good.
great. Thanks.
You're welcome. So we humans have lost the wisdom of genuinely resting and relaxing. We worry too much. We don't allow our bodies to heal, and we don't allow our minds and hearts to heal. That is Thich Nhat Hanh, the famous meditation. He probably wouldn't like to be called a guru, but that's how he's seen. So today we'll talk about sleep and what sleep is. I will try my best to make this just scientific enough for you to be interested and not so scientifically based that you're bored out of your minds. Oh, and it doesn't want to let me. There we go. So if only we could all sleep as well as this seemingly beautiful and sweet dog who is actually a Diablo while awake. So this is Soleil, one of the members of our household, and she is an amazing sleeper. I have no legal disclosures, and I'm not affiliated with any pharmaceutical companies, by the way. I don't have any conflicts of interest there. So just a brief overview of what we'll talk about today. We'll talk briefly about what sleep is, the basics, why do we need it, what's the architecture of restful sleep, why do we dream, what are some of the common sleep problems, how do we sleep better, and then I have what's called a happiness rewirement. And according to the Dalai Lama, sleep is the best meditation. When I first did this talk, I live in Idaho, and as I'm sure you've seen, the excitement that Idaho can generate on the news with mask burners and anti-maskers running rampant. And I was making this talk and just thinking about sleep and what it means to be asleep and what does it mean to be awake and a dreamer. And of course, I then couldn't resist putting this in. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one, or at least we can all agree to put a mask on. That was my hope here. So Wikipedia is a great resource for information for all of us. I'm sure we've had the opportunity to use Wikipedia. I used Wikipedia a fair amount actually when I was learning biochemistry, and it's not all bad. So Wikipedia says sleep is a naturally recurring state of mind and body characterized by altered consciousness, relatively inhibited sensory activity, reduced muscle activity, and inhibition of nearly all voluntary muscles during rapid eye movement. Sleep, and reduced interactions with the surroundings. At least that's what we all hope in a good night's sleep. It's distinguished from wakefulness by a decreased ability to react to stimuli, but more reactive than a coma or disorders of consciousness. Although anyone who has watched a deeply sleeping puppy or baby will wonder how close to coma they are because they're so hard to rouse. So with sleep displaying very different and active brain patterns, and we'll look at some of those. So a different definition according to the American Sleep Association is sleep is actually nerve signaling chemicals called neurotransmitters that control whether they're nerve signaling chemicals that control whether we're asleep or awake by acting on different groups of nerve cells or neurons in the brain. So what happens is we have in our brains these things called neuroreceptors. It's sort of like a lock. And then we have a neurotransmitter that's sort of like the key. And when the neurotransmitter finds the right lock, they connect. And the neurotransmitters can send a chemical signal to your brain for sleepfulness or wakefulness. So these neurons are in our brainstem. Neuron is just the name of the cell type for the brain. We have different cell types in our bodies, and a neuron is a brain cell. So neurons in the brainstem connect the brain to your spinal cord, and they produce those neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine, which is just the scientific word for adrenaline, that keep some parts of the brain active while we're awake and while we're asleep, actually. Other neurons at the base of the brain in your brainstem, this is your brainstem. Your brainstem is the part of your brain primarily that controls things like breathing, so you don't have to remember to breathe all day. Your heart, so cardiologists, if there are any cardiologists in the group, and neurologists and psychiatrists will disagree what's the most important organ. And of course, psychiatrists and neurologists will say the brain, because this controls all the body functions, telling the heart to beat, telling you to breathe, telling you to sleep. So as a psychiatrist, of course, I think the brain is the most important of the organs. And so those neurons begin signaling when we start to fall asleep, and then they switch off or become inhibited is the word we use to signal us to stay awake. This is just a picture we're not going to go into about the sleep cycle because we'll look at something a little more informative. So what are the stages of sleep that we all go through? It's very important to understand because certain medications do affect different phases of sleep, and people who have sleep disorders may have different times their sleep is interrupted. And so what we have here, and if you look this up on your own, you'll find that different scientists, different sleep specialists will describe stages of sleep slightly differently and break them down slightly differently. But overall, there are the same categories, and they're not describing anything different. They're just breaking the sequence down slightly differently. So N1, N just means non, so non-REM. N1 sleep is light sleep. It has an alpha wave form. And in this light sleep, we have muscle tone, some muscle tone, and regular breathing. I'm gonna see if I can, I've got all your pictures covering up my EEG recording. So an EEG, for any of you who have epilepsy or have had a sleep study, EEG is something that records brain waves. We've got a picture of a sleep brain wave here. And we see in the awake phase, we see some waveforms. And then stage 1 is the non-REM. That changes a little bit from the awake, but it's not radically different. There are fewer waves. There's less density of waveforms. Then in N2, which is going to be called the stage 2 here, loosely, we have a deeper sleep. And we have what's called sawtooths and spindles. It's hard to wake someone up when they're in that deeper sleep. So sorry, this is a perfect example of how people break things down differently. So you'll see the stages here, 1, 2, 3, and REM are slightly differently described, but they're still in the same sequence. So N3 and N4, we progress to deepest sleep. We get delta waves that are our slow wave sleep, and that's actually what you see in this stage 3 picture. We're getting that delta wave. The brain is actually very active. It's hard to awaken someone. And if you are awakened in the middle of this delta wave sleep, you're going to have a really groggy feeling all morning and impaired cognitive ability. This is, you have a 4 a.m. flight, and so you wake up, or you have a 5 a.m. flight and you wake up at 3 a.m. And you usually wake up at 7 and you just can't think straight all day. That's being awakened in the delta wave. And then when we dream, it's typically the REM sleep time. And then if you look, this is, I think, the most amazing thing about the EEG recording is that if you look at that REM sleep wave pattern and compare it to one just above, the awake sleep pattern, they look really similar. And yet this is when our muscles are atonic. We're just floppy without any tone is what atonic means. We have irregular breathing, and that's if you looked at someone really closely, you would see behind their eyelids their rapid eye movement. So we go through this whole cycle about every 90 minutes, give or take, depending on the person. So we can always come back to this. This slide is busy and can be confusing, but we'll move on. If we need to, we'll come back to it later. So what are the main sleep mechanisms taking place? We have two internal biological mechanisms. One is the circadian rhythm. You've probably heard about this. This is the one that, day-night rhythm, and then homeostasis, which is working toward a balance. So these two work together to regulate when you're awake and asleep in your brain. So the circadian rhythms really direct a wide variety of your functions daily, including wakefulness, your body temperature, your metabolism, and the release of hormone. So people often who have hypothyroidism will have some impaired circadian rhythm function because they're not able to regulate as well. So circadian rhythms control your timing of sleep, and they cause you to be sleepy at night with a tendency to be wakeful in the morning without an alarm clock. Your body's biological clock is roughly based on a 24-hour clock, and that controls most circadian rhythms. And these can be, or meant to be, synchronized with the environmental cues like light and temperature, which worked great in farming communities when there wasn't a lot of natural light. I mean, when there was only natural light and not artificial light. But clearly in the technological era we're in, we have multiple sources of light that can really mess up our circadian rhythms. So then what is the sleep-wake homeostasis? So this is a mechanism in your brain that keeps track of your need for sleep in your body. And there's a homeostatic drive to remind your body to sleep after a certain time. And that regulates your sleep intensity. It gets stronger every hour you're awake and causes you to sleep longer and more deeply after sleep deprivation. So basically, you're awake in the day and you go through a time period where increasingly the homeostatic drive will start to push you into feeling sleepier and sleepier. Factors that can influence your sleep-wake needs include medical conditions, medications, stress, sleep environment, and what you eat and drink. And again, we have a very big influence by light and the light we take in. So they're actually specialized cells in retinas that process light, and they tell our brains if it's day or night. And if your brain gets the signal that it's day, as the day progresses, your brain will receive the signal to start producing and sending out melatonin so that you can eventually get sleepy. But if you have a lot of artificial light, that could interfere. And this is just a picture that I thought was pretty of those two things working together, the sleep homeostasis and the circadian rhythms. We won't go through all of this, but this basically shows us how much sleep we need at a given point in life. So whereas a newborn would need 14 to 17 hours on average of sleep per night, an older adult might only need 7 to 8 hours. So as we grow up and age, we need less and less sleep. Most people need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. 7 to 9, then 7 to 8. So I don't know if I'm going too fast. This is a lot of information to cover. Maybe we'll just pause right there and transition into why we dream. So why do we dream? No one is really 100% sure why we dream, but there are 4 main hypotheses about why we dream. As mentioned before, the dreams mostly occur in REM sleep. This is when they're really intense and vibrant. but non-REM dreams occur too. Some people think that, some scientists think that dreaming occurs because dreams are your muse. So in this romanticized version of dreaming, dreams remove the shackles of logic and anxiety. They allow you and your creativity to really bloom. You're not bound by the sort of the mortal shackles, really, of life constraints. You can just be free from that mental slavery. So these are dreams as your muse. Other scientists think that dreams are primarily there to be memory aids for you. And what that means is that dreams help you store really important information, memories and things you've learned. They help get rid of unimportant memories and sort through complicated thoughts and feelings. Two other hypotheses about dreaming. One is the do-it-yourself therapy theory or hypothesis. This is to say that your dreams really allow you to have a safe place in which to confront emotional drama in your life. This and because your brain is operating at a much more emotional level than when you're awake, your brain can make connections regarding your feelings that your conscious self wouldn't make. You've probably heard things like, uh-oh, I think someone may be unmuted. How are we doing? Are we okay?
We took care of it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, so you can, again, be more free in your thoughts and not really distracted even by your day when you're dreaming. And that can help you sort through and be your own therapist, so to speak. The other idea is that this is a dress rehearsal for life. Your dreams are a dress rehearsal. And your amygdala is very active in dreaming. Your amygdala is the part of your brain associated with the survival instinct and what we know is what used to be known as the fight or flight, which is really more appropriately known as the fight, flight, or freeze response that we have to a stressor. Literally, the deer in headlights is a freeze response. One theory suggests that because the amygdala is more active during sleep than in your waking life, it is your brain's way of dealing with a threat. And what we know about the fight, flight, or freeze response, it is that sympathetic nervous system response. The lion in the Sahara, well, I don't even know where lions live. Lions live, I guess, in Africa. And so the lions in Africa, if a person is confronted by a lion, then they're going to have a fight, flight, or freeze response. That is your sympathetic nervous system. And the idea is your amygdala is very active in this when the sympathetic nervous system is turned on. So, but what happens is, fortunately, you can't fight the lion in your sleep because your brain sends out signals to relax your muscles so you don't run or punch someone. Sometimes we will see in folks who have PTSD that they actually do punch out or thrash about in their sleep as part of a sleep disorder. So dress rehearsal for life so that you can act out a response that otherwise you might act out in real life. So a little bit about sleep problems now. And this, I love this because this is the best kind of sleep problem to have. When I am with you, we stay up all night. When you're not here, I can't go to sleep. Praise God for these two insomnias and the difference between them. That's a Rumi quote. All right, so as we talk about our sleep disorders, let's think about our circadian rhythm sleep disorders. We already talked about why they matter. Why does the circadian rhythm matter? Without the right signals from your body's internal master clock, you might not fall asleep on time. You might have fragmented sleep or sleep poorly, or you might wake up too early and not be able to fall back asleep. I love this picture because this is like my household with the dog taking over everything. So some common circadian rhythm sleep disorders are a delayed sleep phase disorder. This is the person who is alert at night and can't sleep until the middle of the night, and then they sleep into the following day. This can happen in people who have a lot of anxiety, and they end up with some, racing thoughts or perseverations where they just go over something over and over, or they have a lot to do and they, make lists at night. This can also happen with people who have ADHD, who tend to ramp up during the day instead of calming down toward the end of the day. An advanced sleep phase disorder is the person who falls asleep very early in the evening from maybe 6 to 9 p.m. They wake in the early hours of the morning, maybe 2 a.m. And this can happen in later life, not infrequently. Then we all know about jet lag. This is the messed up sleep you have from crossing more than 2 time zones. And then we have the shift worker disorder, where someone is working days or nights or a different shift from here to there, and it really messes up their circadian rhythm. So what are parasomnias? So the very first time I did this talk, I did not have anything about parasomnias in this talk, and the whole presentation went sideways because it was the thing that everyone was interested in. Everyone wanted to know about parasomnias. And what are they? They are undesirable behaviors that occur during sleep. And they are commonly associated with the sleep-wake transition period. Some occur during REM sleep, like nightmare disorders, sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is when your mind wakes up in sleep, but your body is still atonic and you can't move. It's very scary. People, scientists have thought that this may explain folks who say that they were abducted by aliens, because what happens is a person awakens in sleep paralysis, which leads to a panic. And that panic can cause some dissociation and a fear of impending doom, which your brain translates into a threat. And so sometimes folks can sort of imagine themselves hovering above their sleeping self. And this may be one explanation for the idea of being abducted by aliens. So if you have ever thought that you were abducted by aliens, if it's a recurrent theme in your life, you may want to get a sleep study and see if you have sleep paralysis. Other things we have are REM sleep behavior disturbances, a disorder that is, again, where someone is acting out in the dream itself. We have parasomnias that occur in the non-REM sleep. These are things like sleepwalking, confusional arousals, and sleep terrors. Sleep terrors are different than nightmares. Sleep terrors are what typically happen to children. And when they wake up, they look like they're awake, they're not really awake, and they're screaming and terrified and confused. What you do for that, by the way, if you ever have a grandchild or someone that wakes up in one of these states, is you do not wake them up. You just redirect them to bed. Waking them up never goes well. So you just redirect them back to bed. And if it's very bad, you can put a bed alarm or a door alarm on their bedroom. And make sure that you have a house alarm so no one walks away in the middle of the night. And according to one Norwegian study of parasomnias, the estimated lifetime prevalence is pretty high of who have sleep disorders. We have sleepwalking. 22.4% of people have had sleepwalking. Sleep talking, 66.8%. Confusional arousals, 18.5%, and night terrors, 10.4%. And these are hereditary. People who have a sleepwalking or sleep talking mother or father are more likely to be sleepwalkers than sleep talkers. Full disclosure, I am a sleep talker, and you can determine what you will about my genetics then, and who I may have inherited that from. So what happens when we are sleep deprived? We won't go through all of these, but when we're sleep deprived, we are more likely to have more sleep problems. 30% of women have insomnia. 23% of people with sleep deprivation have difficulty concentrating from poor sleep. There's a 30% higher risk of obesity with poor sleep. We have a 20% increased risk of driving accidents with sleep deprivation. 40% of men suffer from insomnia. We have an 15% increased risk of cardiovascular disease with sleep deprivation, and an increase of about 45% of depressive symptoms. This is a similar slide, so we won't go through it again. That's just a different picture of the same ideas. We have increased risk of mental health conditions and physical health conditions. Another Rumi quote for you: put your thoughts to sleep. Do not let them cast a shadow over the moon of your heart. Let go of thinking. I won't take a formal survey, but I imagine many people here have lots of thoughts at night that keep them up. So Rumi, if it were only as easy as Rumi says, just let them go, cast them aside. So how do we sleep better? I love this picture. I know not everyone has watched the Tiger King, but she's lying in bed and she's thinking, he's probably thinking about protecting our family from COVID. And he's lying there thinking, oh, I can't believe this whole time I could have had a tiger for only $2,000. You might not think it's as funny as I do. And I can't tell if you're laughing or if I put you to sleep yet, but I'm going to assume you think it's funny. So what do we want to do for sleep hygiene? And some of this is a little bit different than what you've heard before. And it's based on the newer understanding of sleep. And some of it comes from cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a specific type of therapy that focuses on what are called stuck points, if you will, and helps us reframe the things that we do. So what I want you to do to sleep better is I want you to wake up at the same time every day, regardless of it, whether it's a work day, it's a volunteer day, it's whatever kind of day that could change your sleep cycle you have. I want you to wake up at the same time every single day. Your brain and the chemicals it secretes will adapt to waking at a certain time every single day. I want you to create a bedtime routine and follow it. What that's going to do for you is that is going to remind your brain every single night the signals to start transitioning into sleep. It's going to catalyze a neurochemical cascade for your brain if it has a routine that it recognizes. So just like people do for small children, you have a routine. So that might look like you're brushing, you're gonna read for an hour, not in bed, actually in the living room. You're gonna read for an hour, you're gonna go wash your face, you're gonna brush your teeth, you're going to meditate maybe, and then you're gonna go to sleep. So this is important, and one that we can all strive for. And when I look around my own bedroom, I think of all the distractions and things that could interfere with my neurochemical signaling. So the bedroom is for sex and for sleep. It is not for scrolling on your phone, and it is not for watching television. I want you to avoid blue light for at least 3 hours before bed. That light is activating and boosts attention. Blue light is the light from your cell phone, from your computer, your desktop or your laptop, from any device you're using. And I want you to cool off your room. This is sometimes the thing that men like to hear, because there is a debate often on temperature in households. So we do want to keep the room cooler. 60 to 67 degrees is what promotes sleep. If you're too hot, especially if you have a memory foam bed, you're going to get hotter and hotter throughout the night, and it's going to disrupt your sleep. 60 is a little bit on the cool side, but 67 is a great temperature for sleep. You want it quiet, but you don't want it too quiet. You want to turn off distractions and use white noise. And here's what I'll say about this. When you were formed in the uterus, you were bombarded with all sorts of sounds. The swoosh of amniotic fluid, the heartbeat, your own heartbeat, and your mother's heartbeat. You were bombarded. You were not formed in silence. And that forming in a noisy environment, but a consistently noisy environment, was soothing. And it was so disruptive when you were born into this world of stimulus. So at night, even though we're all far, far from the time of our origins, we are going to reproduce the predictable but not so quiet sound with white noise. Now, if you're a person who's always slept great in total silence, fantastic, continue it. But if you're a person who has difficulty sleeping, try white noise. You can get a white noise machine. You can get an app. You can just run a fan, and that is helpful. So we also want to darken the room. We want to have blackout shades to block unwanted light, and we want to turn the clock away from us. If you have a clock in your room, turn it away so that the lights of the numbers aren't shining at you. The other thing that I'll say is if you have a clock in the room and you wake up at 3 a.m., even if you know it's still dark and not time to wake up, you're going to look at it. And this is going to cause more sleep anxiety. Don't look at the clock. You don't need to know what time it is in the middle of the night. You just need to go back to sleep. So don't look at a clock in the middle of the night. And certainly do not get a clock that projects the time onto your ceiling. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but those are out there. So you want to finish eating about 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. And every day or every other day, as best you can, walk, swim, or practice yoga for your mental well-being and to decrease stiffness. That can be chair yoga if you use a wheelchair or you use a walker. That can be stretching. That can, and if you're raring to go, you can, run a marathon. But some movement in your day. And people often think, well, I can't move, it increases my pain. What we find is in the first few days, maybe you feel a little bit stiffer and achier from moving, but over time you will feel better. So you don't want to hurt yourself, but you want to have some movement in your day, because there's nothing worse than having extra stiffness when you're trying to get comfortable at night. And then meditate or use breath work to increase a calm mind. I don't know that we'll have time for a practice today. I do have some good practices that I can send out and you can distribute, or I can drop some links into, if I can figure out how to do that. You want to limit your caffeine until afternoon and until before noon, not afternoon. And then, alcohol and nicotine actually disrupt sleep cycles. So avoid them at night and altogether if you can. So sleep and nutrition, there is actually a connection between nutrition and sleep. Certain foods and beverages close to bedtime do lead to poor sleep and sleep troubles, indigestion will keep you up at night. So you want to avoid fatty or high protein foods at night. The reason that fatty and high protein foods keep us fuller longer is that they are digesting slowly. but slow digestion can lead to feeling overly full or indigestion. Spicy foods will do this, and that's not going to support good sleep. We all know about caffeine interrupting sleep. I've had patients who say, I don't know why I have such insomnia. I take sleep medications. I can't stop sleeping. My insomnia is so bad, I have to drink 3 energy drinks a day. Well, the energy drinks are keeping them up at night. And so it's a vicious cycle. So try to steer clear from the energy drinks. And instead, what you want to choose, depending on your diet and what you can or can't eat, are things like oatmeal or banana at night. And if you're gluten-free, you can actually get gluten-free oatmeal. You could try almonds if you enjoy nuts. They're very sweet and satisfying. Kale is an excellent food to support sleep. And then chickpeas, although chickpeas come with the risk of stinking up the bedroom, so that might not be a great nighttime snack. All right, so what about exercise? This is my own yogini. Oh, I think I skipped past my other child we saw who was on the Parasomnias slide being licked by one of the dogs. This is my yogini. So what do we do for sleep and exercise? We know that sleep and exercise at the right time can really improve sleep. So people who do cardio in the morning sleep better, they sleep deeper and longer at night. They have a more restorative sleep. In the middle of the day, this can actually lead to an improved exercise and performance. Your body temperature will rise, your muscles will be more pliable, and the cool down from midday exercise will actually signal sleep time to your brain with a cascade of chemicals for about 4 to 5 hours. So that's a great time for exercise as well. At night, you want to avoid any strenuous exercise, but it is a great time for breath exercises and meditation. And some forms of yoga really do signal relaxation and readiness for sleep. There are apps out there you can get that walk you through visualizations and things that really support a calm mind. And so Gandhi says, each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning when I wake, I am reborn. That sounds like a blissful sleep to me. We know that regular meditation practice can really lead to changes in the body, similar to changes that occur in sleep. And I'll just leave that there for you. So what are the therapy approaches for sleep? I mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. This focuses on exploring the connection between the way we think, the things we do, and how we sleep. During treatment, a trained CBTI provider helps identify your thoughts and feelings and behaviors that are contributing to symptoms of insomnia. And we kind of do some reality testing to see if they're accurate to determine how to promote better sleep behaviors. It's also often called a multi-component treatment because it does combine cognitive, behavioral, and educational areas. The main parts of CBTI are sleep restriction. And this is, you can take entire classes in CBTI, or I can give you the really brief version of this, which is what I'm going to do. So basically, if you go to bed every night at 10 p.m., and you lie there until midnight and you finally fall asleep at midnight and then you wake up at 6 a.m., you have been in bed for 8 hours, but you've only gotten 6 hours of sleep. You have wasted 2 hours of your life. You probably have better things to do with that 2 hours than lie in bed wondering when you're going to sleep. So if you wake up at 6 a.m. every day and you spend 2 hours at night trying to fall asleep, what I want you to do is I want you to actually get in bed at the time that you fall asleep. I do not want you to get in bed at 10 anymore. I want you to get in bed at midnight. Or if that just seems too extreme, get in bed at 11:45, 11:30. But what you're going to do is you'll find that you actually will have a little bit of difficulty staying awake until the assigned time. And you'll get in bed and you might actually fall asleep. That's the idea behind CBTI, that we really want to increase that sleep efficiency. So if you're getting in bed at 10 and you're waking up at 6, but not falling asleep till midnight, I want you to get in bed at midnight. See what happens. If you fall asleep at midnight or within a few minutes of getting in bed and sleep till 6, the next night, I want you to back it up by 10 or 15 minutes. Get in bed at 11:45. If that works and you sleep throughout, you can back it up to 11:30 until you find that sweet spot of how much sleep you actually need. I want you to aim for a sleep efficiency of about 90%, maybe even 95%. I don't want you going to bed just because you think you must get 8 hours of sleep and go to bed at 10 and lie there wide awake, agonizing. It doesn't help you. It increases your sleep anxiety and decreases your time. And just really, it's very upsetting. All of you who have insomnia know this. So you want to do the things we talked about, control the stimulus in the room. You want to have the sleep hygiene. You want to wake up at the same time every day. You want to challenge what we call a cognitive distortion. I must have 8 hours of sleep. No, you must not. Maybe you need 7. Maybe you need 9. Maybe you need 6. I can tell you last night, I'm a night owl. I went to sleep a little early for me. I was very tired. Went to bed at like 10:30 and I woke up at 3:30 a.m. wide awake and ready to go because I'm not a long sleeper. I don't need much sleep. So you will need to figure out how much sleep you need by doing this exercise. Go to bed at the time you typically fall asleep. So that is how we're going to get you sleeping better. So we're not going to actually talk about this. This is a nightmare protocol. All right. So let's talk about sleep medications for a moment here. So sleep medications are not typically approved for long-term use. These are short-acting solutions to long-term problems, and they often lead to a hangover effect due to long half-lives, and they disrupt those sleep cycles. So when we went through those sleep cycles, your brain has a predetermined pattern of how long it needs to be in each of those segments in order for you to have restful sleep. Medications like Benadryl, Ambien, alcohol even will disrupt that sleep cycle. So you're in different phases for different durations than your natural tendency. So you're not getting the right amount of time in each phase. You also can get an increased tolerance to these medications and a dependence, and you need more and more over time. In women, especially, the hypnotic medications like Ambien can lead to extra parasomnias, including sleep shopping, sleep eating, sleepwalking, sleep driving, lots of dangerous things. And there is the amnestic effect of these medications, meaning that people who take these medications sometimes think they have early dementia because there is an amnestic and an amnesia effect from the hypnotic medications like Ambien and the medications like Xanax and Ativan and clonazepam, the medications we know as the benzodiazepines. These are not good for long-term sleep solutions. Much better is the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia that we just talked about, and determining when you fall asleep and then working backwards from there. So what I also want to say, though, is you don't want to leave this talk and say, you know what, I'm stopping all these medications right now. I'm stopping my Ambien, I'm stopping my Xanax, I'm not going to drink my nightcap anymore. I'm not going to take my nortriptyline anymore, because stopping these abruptly can actually lead to some significant withdrawal problems, especially the benzodiazepines. So you're not going to have a bad withdrawal from something like Ambien. You're just going to have a rebound effect with worse insomnia. So you would want to taper it slowly, but with your doctor's advice. But something like alcohol and benzodiazepines at night can cause a life-threatening withdrawal. So you absolutely, if you're taking those for sleep and you're thinking about trying to stop or decrease the amount you use, you want to talk to your doctor about a withdrawal protocol and doing it very gradually so you don't end up having a seizure or other problem. This is just a really long list of medications. We are not going to go through them all. I will tell you that as we age, benzodiazepines cause increased confusion. Again, this is the Xanax, the Valiums, the Ativans, and the clonazepams of the world. They cause increased confusion. They're called hypnotics or amnestics, and they do cause people to think they have dementia when in fact you don't. It's just a medication side effect. So if you're sitting there wondering, and I have patients of all age groups who think that they have early dementia, and really, they're just taking too many Valium. So they walk into a room and it's more than the normal of why did I walk in here? They walk into a room and they're just disoriented for a minute and not sure why or what they're doing. So they're not great medications for sleep. Sometimes primary care physicians will also move toward antipsychotics for sleep. These are the Seroquels of the world and Zyprexas, Abilify. These medications have a black box warning for increased stroke risk for folks over 65. So just be aware of that. And then let's see how much time we have. Oh, we should stop for questions soon. But this is, I did a course, an online course through Yale on the science of happiness. And one of the exercises the professor had us do is called a rewirement. And in this particular rewirement, you commit to 4 nights this week trying to get better sleep by exercising, sleep hygiene, going to bed at the time you typically fall asleep, and avoiding caffeine and alcohol, and then logging it, and then congratulating yourself if you are able to get more sleep. So this supports your personal happiness. We're not going to do this meditation. It wants to do it, but we're going to keep moving. I am going to read you a poem from Mary Oliver, though, and then we're going to wrap up and take a few questions. Sleeping in the forest, I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars but my thoughts. And they floated, light as moths, among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell, as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning I had vanished at least 12 times into something better. So that's sleep. And Ernest Hemingway leaves us with these thoughts. I love sleep. My life has the tendency to fall apart when I'm awake, Well, shall we take some questions?
I have a question. This is Carol.
Hi, Carol.
When I wake up sometimes from what has been a very exciting dream, very vivid and very memorable, I want to tell somebody in my family about it. It's so vivid to me. But by the time an hour has passed, I can't even tell you what the dream was. Why does that happen?
Mm-hmm. So this is the most fantastic mystery of dreams. What I would recommend you do is keep a piece of paper beside your bed and a pencil and log your dreams that you awaken, from which you awaken. What will happen? This is a mystery. The thought is that your brain does not want you to have to confront these complexities during wakefulness, and so you forget. But what you will find is that as you write down your dreams, they become more and more complex. Your brain will actually make your dreams more and more complex as you write them down. So you write down your dreams for a week, the next week they are going to be even more complicated. It's a mystery. No one knows
But
why.
is it the same type of dream or a completely different subject?
Oh, it could be anything, but more complex.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Dr. Fox, we have a couple questions in
Sure.
the chat box, and I
Yeah.
know that we've only have a few minutes left.
That's okay.
What about napping? That seems to be, can we nap during the day?
Yep. So if you're going to nap, what I want you to do is limit it to either 30 minutes or to a full sleep cycle of about an hour and a half or 3 hours. We know that most people have a full sleep cycle in about 90 minutes. So you can get 2 of those in a 3-hour nap, or go into a 30-minute nap so you don't get into your deep, deep sleep. We find that if you try to take a nap kind of in between, like an hour-long nap, then you wake up in a weird part of the sleep cycle and it's not restful.
Great.
If you find that you're falling asleep all day, and you think you're spending a lot of time in bed asleep, you may have sleep apnea and you should have a sleep study.
Great. And one other question before we let you go is, if we do wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and can't fall asleep, what do we do? Do we get out of bed and read, or do we just lay there until we fall asleep?
Yeah, if you are awake, wide awake, and so if any of you have gone to medical school, you're probably ruined for life like I am. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I am wide awake, because if the pager goes off, you're off to the hospital. Wide awake. So if you are wide awake, get out of bed. Get out of bed, go do something else, and then without bright lights. And if you start to feel drowsy at all, return to bed.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Dr. Fox, thank you. I know that you have another meeting to attend, so we will
That's
let you
okay.
go.
I think we could probably take one short question.
All right. So Nancy was asking about what is the jerk one feels during a dream, like when they're falling, the jerk that catches you right before you hit the pavement.
Isn't it terrible? That is the worst. So I have these often. This is just when you're starting to transition from wakefulness into that first sleep phase. It's your body is just, I don't know, for lack of better words, your body's just messing with you. I don't know why we have that jerk, but it's really common and it's startling, especially if you have any kind of trauma history. You may be jerked back into full wakefulness in kind of that alert stage. So anything you can do to promote calm mind, like meditation before you go to sleep, can settle that down. I wish I had a more scientific answer for that jerk. There's probably a sleep specialist out there who does, but I'm not aware of it. One more.
Yvette, you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, you listed a bunch of medications and I saw melatonin was on the list. Is melatonin really not a good thing to take? Because I have used that when I couldn't fall asleep.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question, because I should have brought this up earlier. Melatonin is a good medicine to take. It is actually not really even a medication. It's a hormone that your brain naturally produces. And as we age, we make less and less. And this is thought to be one of the reasons that as we get older, we just don't sleep as well. Melatonin that you can get at the store is in what we call supraphysiologic doses, meaning it's way more than your brain would ever produce. So sometimes people think that more is better. It's not. You can just get the gummies at Walgreens or whatever pharmacy of choice you have, and get the ones that say 3 milligrams or 5 milligrams, and just take one.
Got it.
There's no point in taking like 4 or 5 of them.
Okay.
They're good though. They taste good. So
They do. Okay.
if you have a sugar problem, like I sometimes do, I've got to like remind myself not to eat melatonin gummies all day.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
And I would say, you know, sometimes people say take it 30 minutes before sleep. I don't think so. Take it about a couple of hours before you want to go to sleep, and it'll kind of mimic that sleep drive that you can get from your body's natural melatonin. And if you forget to take it, that's okay. Take it when you remember.
Right. And I'm so used to going to sleep with the television on. I don't know if I could do that.
Well, if it's your white noise and you sleep okay, that's fine. If you don't sleep well, it could be a factor.
Right. Okay.
Well, I'm going to go see some folks, have some patient time today. It's
Thank
nice
you
to
again,
be
Dr.
here.
Fox.
Thank you.
Thank you
Wonderful
so
Thank you.
much.
This is great.
Thank you.
Take it easy.